Internal communications are forgiving. If an email to your own team is slightly off, nobody really notices. There's trust built up. There's context everyone shares. Client-facing work is different. Every email, every proposal, every update is being read by someone who's deciding, consciously or not, whether they trust you, whether they want to keep working with you, whether you're worth what they're paying. That's a lot of weight to put on a piece of writing. And it's exactly why client-facing work is where people are most hesitant to use Claude AI. The stakes feel too high to hand over to a tool. This episode makes the case that client-facing work is actually where Claude AI delivers some of its highest value, if you use it the right way. We'll cover the specific risks, the specific techniques that address them, and 5 real client-facing scenarios, from brief to output. People worry that client-facing content produced by Claude AI will sound generic, like it could have come from anyone, for anyone. They worry it'll miss the specific relationship history that makes a client communication land well. They worry that if a client somehow knew AI was involved, it would damage the trust they've built. All 3 concerns are valid, and all 3 are about how Claude AI is used, not whether it should be used at all. Generic content comes from generic briefs. We've covered this across the channel. Missing a relationship history comes from not putting that history into the brief. And the worry about clients finding out misunderstands what Claude AI actually does in this context. It's not writing instead of you, it's helping you write faster and more consistently, the same way a strong first draft from a skilled junior colleague would. The solution to all 3 concerns is the same: better briefing, more context, and treating Claude AI's output as a draft you shape, never as a finished product you send unchanged. Here's the case for why client-facing work is actually a strong use case, not a risky one. Client communications are high stakes and time pressured. You need them to be excellent, and you often need them quickly, after a difficult call, before a deadline, in response to something unexpected. That combination of excellence and speed is exactly what a well-built Claude AI workflow delivers. Client communications also tend to follow patterns. Proposals have a structure, status updates have a structure, difficult conversations have a structure. That repeatability is exactly what Cowork project context and task templates are built for. And client communications benefit enormously from consistency. The quality floor argument from episode 5 applies directly here. A client who receives consistently polished, well-structured communication develops a different level of confidence in you than a client who receives communication that varies with how busy your week has been. High stakes, repeatable patterns, consistency rewarded. That's exactly the profile of work where a Claude AI workflow delivers the most value. Before the 5 scenarios, one rule that applies to every single piece of client-facing content. Claude AI produces the draft. You produce the relationship. That means the structure, the clarity, the professional polish, Claude AI can produce all of that exceptionally well, especially with a strong brief. But the specific details that make a client feel known, the inside reference, the acknowledgement of something they mentioned 3 weeks ago, the precise calibration of tone for this particular relationship, those come from you. Practically, this means brief Claude AI with as much relationship context as you have. Let it produce the structural draft, and then personally add or adjust the 2 or 3 details that only you would know. That final pass is what makes the output unmistakably yours, sent through a tool that made the process faster. Skip that final pass, and you risk the generic-sounding output people are right to worry about. Include it, and you get speed and polish without losing the relationship. 5 client-facing scenarios, each one with the brief, the output, and the personal pass that makes it land. Scenario 1. The new client welcome. This is the first substantive communication a new client receives after signing. It sets the tone for the entire relationship, so it matters more than its length would suggest. The brief. I'm onboarding a new client, a mid-sized manufacturing company that's just signed for our quarterly advisory service. The relationship was won partly because they liked our directness in the pitch, so I don't want this to feel like a generic onboarding email. I need to welcome them, introduce the team they'll be working with, outline what happens in the first 30 days, and reinforce why they made the right choice, without sounding like I'm still selling. Tone: warm, confident, direct, matching the personality that won the pitch. Around 300 words. What comes back is a structured welcome that hits all the functional requirements: team introduction, 30-day plan, confidence-building close. The personal pass: you add the specific detail from the pitch meeting that won them over. A comment their CFO made, a specific concern you addressed well. One sentence. That's the difference between a good onboarding email and one that makes the client think, these people get us. Scenario 2. The status update during a quiet patch. Every client relationship has quiet periods. Work is progressing, but there's nothing dramatic to report. These updates are easy to skip or phone in. That's a mistake, because consistency during quiet periods is exactly what builds trust for when things get difficult. The brief. Monthly update for a client where this month was steady but unremarkable. No major wins, no issues, just consistent progress on the agreed work streams. I still want this update to feel substantive, not like a placeholder. Cover what was completed this month, how it connects to their broader goals, and what's coming next month. I don't want it to feel padded. If it was a quiet month, the update can be appropriately brief, but it needs to feel intentional, not rushed. Professional, straightforward tone. 200 words. What comes back is a brief, well-structured update that doesn't pretend more happened than did, but frames the steady progress in terms of the client's broader goals, which makes nothing dramatic feel like on track. The personal pass: a one-line acknowledgement of something specific from your last conversation. A question they asked, a concern they raised, shows you're tracking the relationship even during the quiet periods. Scenario 3. The scope change conversation. This is one of the most difficult client conversations. The client wants something additional or different, and you need to communicate that it affects scope, timeline, or cost without the conversation turning adversarial. The brief. I need to email a client about a scope change. They've asked for additional functionality that wasn't in our original agreement. I'm happy to do the work, but it needs additional budget and will add 2 weeks to the timeline. I want them to feel that we're being collaborative and solution-oriented, moving toward a sense of partnership, not that we're nickel and diming them or being inflexible, moving away from anything that feels transactional or reluctant. I need to clearly state the budget and timeline impact without burying it, but the overall feeling should be, we're excited to help you do this properly, not this is going to cost you. Professional, warm, solution-focused. Around 250 words. I need to email a client about a scope change. They've asked for additional functionality that wasn't in our original agreement. I'm happy to do the work, but it needs additional budget and will add 2 weeks to the timeline. I want them to feel that we're being collaborative and solution-oriented, moving toward a sense of partnership, not that we're nickel and diming them or being inflexible, moving away from anything that feels transactional or reluctant. I need to clearly state the budget and timeline impact without burying it, but the overall feeling should be, we're excited to help you do this properly, not this is going to cost you. Professional, warm, solution-focused. Around 250 words. Notice the toward and away from technique from episode 3, doing real work here. This is exactly the kind of nuanced situation where it matters most. What comes back? An email that leads with enthusiasm for the request, states the impact clearly but doesn't dwell on it, and closes with next steps that feel collaborative rather than transactional. The personal pass: your direct read on this specific client's risk tolerance. Do they need extra reassurance, or are they comfortable enough that you can be more direct? Adjust the final paragraph accordingly. Scenario 4. The proposal follow-up. You sent a proposal a week ago. No response yet. This follow-up is delicate. Too pushy and you seem desperate. too passive, and the proposal dies quietly. The brief? I sent a proposal to a prospective client a week ago. No response. I want to follow up in a way that adds value rather than just chasing a response. Since I sent the proposal, there's been a relevant development in their industry, specific development, that strengthens the case for what we proposed. I want to follow up to lead with that insight, not with just checking in. I want them to feel I'm thinking about their business, not just trying to close a deal. Moving toward genuine value add, not pushy or transactional. Moving away from anything that feels like a sales chase. End with a low-pressure next step. Professional, insightful, not salesy. Around 150 words. What comes back leads with the industry insight, connects it naturally back to the proposal, and ends with an easy next step rather than a demand for a decision. The personal pass. Make sure the industry development you're referencing is genuinely something you noticed and found relevant, not a fabricated hook. Claude AI can structure the message, but the insight itself needs to be real and specific to land credibly. Scenario 5. The difficult feedback conversation. A client has given feedback that's hard to hear. Maybe they're unhappy with a deliverable, maybe they feel the relationship isn't working the way they expected. This is the highest stakes scenario in the whole set, and it's exactly where people are most likely to either avoid using Claude AI or use it badly. The brief. A client has told me they're unhappy with the pace of our engagement. They feel things are moving too slowly and they're starting to question the value. This is partly fair. We have had some delays, and partly not. Some of the delay is on their side, providing information we need. I need to respond in a way that takes genuine ownership of our part without accepting blame for theirs, proposes a concrete plan to accelerate, and rebuilds their confidence. I want them to feel heard and that we're taking this seriously, moving toward trust and re-engagement, not defensive or dismissive of their concerns, but also not so apologetic that it sounds like we agree everything is our fault, moving away from either extreme. This needs to feel like a turning point, not damage control. Direct, accountable, solution-focused. Around 300 words. This is the scenario where the toward and away from technique is doing the most critical work, navigating between two failure modes that are equally damaging. What comes back? An email that acknowledges the client's experience without conceding points that aren't accurate, proposes specifics, and closes with genuine commitment rather than generic reassurance. The personal pass? This is the one scenario where the personal pass matters most. Read it aloud. Make sure every sentence sounds like you, in your voice, meaning what it says. For a conversation this sensitive, the brief gets you a strong structural foundation, but the final calibration has to be entirely yours. Look at what's consistent across all 5 scenarios. Every brief included a toward and an away from. Client-facing work is almost always navigating some tension, confidence without arrogance, honesty without alarm, accountability without weakness. The technique from episode 3 isn't optional here. It's the thing that makes client-facing Claude AI output usable rather than flat. Every scenario had a personal pass, not editing for grammar, adding the one detail that only you with the relationship history could know. That's non-negotiable for anything client-facing. And every brief described the relationship, not just the task. Who this client is, what they value, what the history is. That's the context that turns a generic structural draft into something that reads as genuinely yours. Here's how to set this up properly in Cowork, so you're not rebuilding relationship context every time. For each significant client, create a Cowork project. The project context should cover who the client is and what they do, the history of the relationship, how it started, key moments, current sentiment, what they value most, speed, thoroughness, proactive communication, cost consciousness, and your read on their communication style and risk tolerance. This context, once written, means every communication you bring to that project starts already calibrated to this specific client. You're not re-explaining the relationship in every brief. You've already told Claude AI who they are. Update the context periodically. after significant conversations, after scope changes, after anything that shifts the relationship. Treat it the way you'd treat your own mental model of the client, because that's exactly what it is. A few things worth being explicit about avoiding. Don't send Claude AI's first output unedited to a client, ever. Not because it's likely to be wrong, because the personal pass is what makes it genuinely yours, and skipping it is the single biggest risk in this entire category of work. Don't use Claude AI for the most sensitive, relationship-critical conversations without significant personal involvement. The harder the conversation, the more your own judgment needs to be in the room, with Claude AI supporting the structure rather than driving the content. Don't let efficiency become a reason to communicate less. The point of a faster workflow is to communicate more consistently and more thoughtfully, not to do the minimum and move on. Clients notice effort, and a workflow that makes you faster should be used to raise the bar, not lower the time spent. Here's what happens over time when you build this properly. Clients who receive consistently polished, well-structured, well-timed communication develop a level of trust that compounds. They stop wondering whether you're on top of things. They assume you are, because every interaction has confirmed it. That trust shows up in renewal conversations, in referrals, in how much benefit of the doubt you get when something does go wrong, because the relationship has a track record of reliability behind it. None of that comes from any single brilliant email. It comes from the consistency that a properly built Claude AI workflow makes achievable, even during your busiest weeks, even when you're juggling multiple clients, even on the days when you'd otherwise be cutting corners. Here's the challenge for this episode. Pick your most important client relationship. Build a Cowork project for it this week if you haven't already. Write the context properly: who they are, the relationship history, what they value, your read on their style. Then take the next communication you'd send to that client, whatever it is, routine or difficult, and brief Claude AI properly, toward and away from full relationship context, and do the personal pass before you send it. Notice the difference, not just in how fast it was to produce, in how it reads. That's the standard to bring to every client communication from here forward. 6 episodes in, here's where things stand. The foundation, brief framework, 5 mistake fixes, briefing scenarios, workflow architecture, career positioning, and now client-facing work specifically. Next on Claude for Work, a full tutorial on Cowork itself. We've referenced it constantly across 6 episodes without ever going deep on the feature. Multi-project management, how context works across different projects, advanced setup that goes beyond what we've covered so far. If you've been building projects along with this channel, that episode will take you considerably further. After that, the Workflows series proper, building role-specific systems for project management, legal, operations, and more. Subscribe if you haven't. Tell me in the comments, what's your most difficult recurring client conversation? It might become a future scenario. Quick recap before the products. The golden rule: Claude AI produces the draft, you produce the relationship. 5 scenarios: welcome, quiet patch update, scope change, proposal follow-up, difficult feedback, each demonstrating the toward and away from technique and the personal pass. The client context system in Cowork, built once per client, updated as the relationship evolves, eliminating the need to re-explain the relationship in every brief. And the trust dividend. Consistency compounds into a level of client confidence that no single communication, however brilliant, can produce on its own. If you remember nothing else from this episode, remember this line: Claude AI produces the draft. You produce the relationship. Every technique in this episode exists in service of that division of labor. Get it right, and client-facing work becomes one of the highest value applications of everything you've learned across this channel. 2 things in the description. The brief, 1 page, free. The toward and away from technique, which does the heaviest lifting in nearly every scenario in this episode, is on it. Your first week with Claude AI at work, $20. Day 2, your first project, walks you through exactly the kind of context setting we covered for client relationships today. Both links in the description, via Claude for Lawyers on Gumroad, same creator. One more thing before we close out. A quick reference for the 5 scenarios we covered so you can come back to this episode whenever one of these situations comes up. The new client welcome. Set the tone, reinforce the decision they made. The quiet patch update. Consistency during unremarkable periods builds the trust you need for difficult ones. The scope change. Toward partnership, away from anything transactional. The proposal follow-up. Lead with value, not with just checking in. The difficult feedback conversation. Own your part, hold your ground on theirs. Make it a turning point. 5 situations. Every client relationship runs into some version of all 5 eventually. Now, you've got a brief for each one. That's episode 6. Client-facing work isn't the place to avoid Claude AI. It's one of the places it matters most. If you bring the relationship and let Claude AI bring the structure. Serious skills, actual output. Every time. See you in the next one.